Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be shooting the first section of Understanding Scientology Chapter 1, From Dianetics to Scientology, the Evolution of a Cult. Now I'm going to be shooting this kind of over a few days. This chapter is very long and packed full of information, so I want to make sure that I can break this all down for you, and I'm going to put it all together at the end. So you may notice a kind of involvement of makeup and outfit changes throughout this video, but this is all one chapter and it's going to be just a culmination at the end. So get something to eat, get something to snack on, and stay tuned. Okay guys, so here we go with part 4. Understanding Scientology by Marjorie Wakefield, who's a ex-Scientology. Well, she's an ex-Scientologist. This is part 4 of chapter 1, From Dianetics to Scientology, the Evolution of a Cult. This is like a seriously in-depth chapter. We've gone from L. Ron Hubbard's childhood to when he was writing Pulp Fiction, to when he wrote Dianetics, to when the Dianetics foundations were set up, to when he started Scientology, and now we are to where he set up St. Hill, to now we are where he started Sea Org. So now we're going to start from where I just left off, where we were talking about the ethics and overboarding and these just disgusting ethics policies and punishments. So let's start there. The security and anonymity which Hubbard had hoped to achieve at sea eluded him, however, as the strange goings on aboard the ship succeeded in antagonizing officials in the local ports. The daily practice of overboarding, carried out in full view of the locals on shore, accompanied by the fact that a large percentage of the ship's crew were female, fueled a dangerous rumor circulating throughout the sea that Scientology ships were in fact CIA ships. While docked in the port of Corfu, Greece, Hubbard felt that the last he had found a stable port for his ships. He proceeded as usual to integrate himself with the local authorities by expansive promises to bring prosperity to the area by building hotels, roads, factories, golf courses, and even a university of philosophy on the island. He orchestrated a lavish and public renaming ceremony to which local authorities were invited, and in which the ship was renamed Diana, the Athena, and the Apollo, as a demonstration of Hubbard's affinity for things Greek. Unfortunately, the British Council of the island, being tipped off by his government as the true nature of the mystery ships, and perhaps fearing a Scientology takeover of the island, informed the local authorities, Hubbard and his ships were given 24 hours to leave Greece. On land, the Scientology organizations were also encountering stormy weather. In England, the Scientology Prohibition Act was passed, barring foreigners from entering the country to study or practice Scientology. In Rhodesia, a ban on importing Scientology material was passed. In Perth, Australia, the local Scientology organization was raided by the police. New inquiries were undertaken in New Zealand and in South Africa. The popular John McMaster resigned from Scientology, and in the United States it was revealed that Charles Manson had studied and practiced Scientology before inciting his followers to commit their savage murders in Los Angeles. Also in the United States, the IRS began to look into Scientology. The Sea Org, meanwhile, had hastily relocated to the port of Tangier in Morocco, and the Scientologists once again embarked on a campaign to win over the locals. Hubbard had renewed hopes of finding a home port for Scientology. The Scientologists offered their services to the Army and to the secret police, demonstrating the E-meter and its applicability in ferreting out traitors and secret agents. However, the faction of the government to which they had made their overtures carried out an unsuccessful coup attempt, and as a result were all executed. The Scientologists were lucky to escape without incident. Word reached Hubbard that Scientology was about to be indicted in France and that the French officials were going to seek Hubbard's extradition for prosecution in their fraud case against the church. Hubbard fled to New York, where he hid out in a small apartment in Queens for 9 months with a few of his loyal Sea Org members until the crisis passed. 9 months later, although he was indicted in absentia in France for fraud, it was deemed safe for him to return to the ship. Shortly afterward, Hubbard suffered a motorcycle accident in Tenerife in the Canary Islands, in which he broke an arm and several ribs. Never a good patient during the weeks of his convalescence, Hubbard was in an unusually foul mood, even for him. During one of his black moods, he conceived a new punishment as part of Scientology ethics system, the Rehabilitation Project Force, or the RPF. The RPF, in effect, is a prison, and it was an idea quickly put into practice at most of the major Scientology organizations around the world. The RPF has since become the dread of every Scientology staff member. As a disciplinary measure within Scientology, any staff member falling into disfavor for any reason could be assigned to the RPF. Conditions in the RPF are severe. The offending staff members usually cannot bathe, must wear distinctive uniforms, or else a gray rag tied around their arm, cannot speak unless spoken to, or are shunned by the rest of the group. They receive minimal sleep, live in inhumane conditions, and are sometimes fed food left over from the plates of the regular staff members. On the ship, anyone crossing Hubbard was subject to immediate demotion to the RPF. At one point, Hubbard established what was called the RPF's RPF for those unfortunate inhabitants of the regular RPF who were insufficiently broken in will and in need of a further rehabilitation. As Hubbard grew increasingly paranoid, he collected around himself a group of youngsters, mostly female, who were the children of veteran Sea Org members. This group he called the Commodore's Messenger Organization, or CMO. They were trained to deliver messages on the ship. When given an order by Hubbard, they were trained to run to the recipient of the order and deliver the order in the exact tone of voice and volume used by Hubbard. They soon developed into a powerful and feared group aboard the ship. In many ways, these young Scientologists perfectly suited Hubbard's needs. Many of them knew little of life outside Scientology. They were impressionable and malleable. They were trained to become young clones of Hubbard, fanatic and ruthless. They were unquestionably devoted to Hubbard and competed among themselves to find new ways to please him. They also served as personal attendants to Hubbard, waking him in the mornings, laying out his clothes, helping him dress, smearing his face with creams, waiting on him, following him about the ship, and even carrying ashtrays to catch the falling ashes from his cigarettes. No leader ever had a more devoted routine of servants than did Hubbard with his CMO. And it was a two-way street. As Hubbard became increasingly paranoid through his later years, he grew to trust no one except the children of the CMO, who would eventually inherit the church. Rumors continue to circulate throughout the Mediterranean that the Scientology ships were running drugs, working for the CIA, or engaging in white slave traffic. As a result, it grew more and more dangerous for the ships to dock. The tensions peaked in the Portuguese port of Funchal on the island of Madria, when the angry mob pelted the Apollo with rocks and bottles, injuring several Scientologists in the melee. Hubbard ordered the ship to sail due west. The staff realized excitedly that they were headed back to America, which many of them had not seen for years. The Apollo was just an hour from the port of Charleston, South Carolina, when a frantic radio signal was received from shore warning of impending danger. A welcoming party comprised of immigration officials, the DEA, U.S. Customs, the FBI, the Coast Guard, and several U.S. Marshals were waiting for them on shore, ready to arrest Hubbard. Alerted in time, Hubbard ordered the ship to sail to the Bahamas. For a year, the ship sailed an elusive course throughout the Caribbean, staying at one island port after another. In 1975, while docked in Curaçao in the Netherlands, Hubbard suffered a heart attack and had to be taken to a local hospital. He spent several weeks in Curaçao Hilton, being nursed to health by his faithful disciples. Soon, however, just as it had in the Mediterranean, the ship with its strange crew began to arouse suspicion in the ports of the Caribbean, and Hubbard knew that his quest for safety at sea had come to end. Hubbard sent scouts ahead to find property for sale at the coast of Florida. They reported back that they had discovered a large hotel for sale in Clearwater, Florida, which was quickly purchased for $2.3 million in cash under the phony name of the United Churches of Florida. The Sea Org moved into the new headquarters, and Hubbard was settled in a suite of apartments in a nearby town. It was not long before some of the Clearwater natives, curious about the army of secretive, uniformed young people inhabiting the religious retreat in the old Fort Harrison Hotel, began to investigate. A resourceful newspaper reporter was the first one to make the connection to Scientology, as the church continued to buy up more and more property in the small tourist town of Clearwater. Tensions arose between the citizens and Scientologists, in spite of the efforts of Scientologists to conquer the hearts of the Clearwater natives with a succession of carefully orchestrated public relations campaigns. These tensions continue to exist today. Very much so. On another front, Hubbard had long been preoccupied with the problem of discovering what information existed about his organization in the files of government agencies. But it would take a relatively long time to gain access to these files under the Freedom of Information Act. Hubbard conceived a plan to get this information in a more direct way. He called this plan Operation Snow White, not because of the fairy tale character of the same name, but because he considered once the government files were cleaned of damaging information about Scientology, they would be snow white. Within the Guardian's Office of Scientology, the branch of the organization which routinely trained operatives and agents to carry out various covert operations for the church, plans were laid to infiltrate a select list of government agencies. In the mid-70s, the Guardian's Office staff member named Gerard Wolfe secured a job as a typist at the IRS. Using his official ID badge, he and another Guardian's Office staff member named Michael Meisner carried out a number of successful burglaries of a dozen different IRS and Department of Justice offices, managing to illicitly photocopy and steal tens of thousands of government documents. The break-ins continued with impunity for more than 18 months. In June of 1976, a suspicious guard alerted the FBI that the two men were stopped on one of their missions and questioned about their activities. Shortly afterward, Gerard Wolfe was arrested, and a warrant was put out for the arrest of Michael Meisner. Although the Guardian's office quickly put in effect an elaborate plan to protect Scientology from being implicated in these burglaries, their efforts were sabotaged when Meisner, who was being kept prisoner by the church, managed to escape and turn state evidence for the FBI. On July 7, 1977, 134 FBI agents carried out a surprise raid of the headquarters of Scientology in both Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. They seized over 48,000 documents and subsequently indicted 11 top Guardian's Office agents, including Mary Sue Hubbard, who, as controller of the Guardian's Office, was ultimately responsible for its criminal activities. Hubbard, learning of the raids, immediately fled into hiding in Nevada, leaving his wife to take the rap for crimes he had originated. On the 26th of October 1979, U.S. District Judge Charles Ritchie sentenced 9 of the 11 Guardian's Office officials to prison, including Hubbard's wife, who served 1 year of a 5-year sentence before being paroled. After the arrest, Hubbard distanced himself from his wife, seeing her for the last time in 1979. Hubbard directed the Sea Organization to purchase several properties in remote locations in Southern California, where Hubbard would spend the rest of his days hiding from the world from the enemies he believed were constantly in pursuit. He took a cadre of young people from the CMO with him into the desert near Palm Springs. At one point, he assembled a movie studio on one of the desert properties and endeavored to produce movies for the enlightenment of the general population. Most of the movies were lurid documentaries about the savagery of psychiatrists and the other enemies. Hubbard had been plagued by poor health for many years. In September 1978, he suffered a pulmonary embolism from which he nearly died, yet he survived to live for another 8 years. When his whereabouts were compromised by a defecting Sea Org member, Hubbard was forced to flee once more to an even more remote location. For the last 5 years of his life, he remained in hiding on a large ranch in Creston, California, where he lived quietly with 3 of his most loyal CMO aides. In a massive reorganization within the church in the early 1980s, and with the silent support of Hubbard, the children of the CMO, who had by now grown into young adults, began to exert their authority over the rest of the Scientology organization. The old guard, upper echelon executives within Scientology were removed from power in an internal purge by the CMO. The network of independent missions, lower-level Scientology organizations offering introductory services and supplying the more advanced organizations with customers were taken over, nationalized by the CMO. The mission holders were forced to turn over all their assets to the new guard, or risk being expelled from the organization entirely. In 1976, Hubbard's oldest son, Quentin, committed suicide. His oldest daughter has defected from the cult. His 2 youngest children are reportedly still in the organization. His wife has been in seclusion since her release from prison in 1980. On January 19, 1986, Hubbard issued his last communication to the organization, in which he promoted himself from Commodore to Admiral. On January 24, 1986, Hubbard died at his remote ranch in Creston, California, of a cerebral hemorrhage. Although an autopsy was not performed, his fingerprints were matched with those on file with the FBI and the Department of Justice. 3 days later, it was announced to an assembled Scientologists in Los Angeles that L. Ron Hubbard had, quote, moved on to his next level of research, a level beyond the imagination and into a state of exterior to the body. The body he had used to facilitate his existence in this universe has ceased to be useful and in fact had become an impediment to the work he now must do outside its confines. His followers were told and fully believed that L. Ron Hubbard used his lifetime and body he knew to accomplish what no man has ever accomplished. He unlocked the mysteries of life and gave Scientologists the tools to free themselves and their fellow man. Today, some 40,000 dedicated Scientologists in the country and a total of 100,000 worldwide carry on the vital work of Scientology, which they believe will free mankind. So that ends chapter 1 of Understanding Scientology by Marjorie Wakefield. That's From Dianetics to Scientology, the Evolution of a Cult. So we followed L. Ron Hubbard from his childhood through his pulp fiction career to him writing Dianetics, to the foundation of Dianetics, to how he bankrupted all of that, to him forming Scientology, to him getting chased all over the world, to him forming the Sea Org, to how he started buying up Clearwater and how that's still a huge, tremendous turmoil in Clearwater to this day, to how everything went down with his third wife, to him running off into being in seclusion, to him dying. So that tells all of that. So that ends chapter 1. Next, we're going to be tackling chapter 2, which is titled L. Ron Hubbard, Messiah or Madman, which should be interesting. I will get started on that soon to get that out to you guys. So this turned into a 4-part on chapter 1, so I'm pretty sure the other chapters are going to be kind of broken up into parts. Anyway, guys, I will see you in the next one. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you're notified of every single time that I post a video. In the comment section down below, leave me any questions regarding any of the content covered in this video. Also, in the description box, you will find my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also, my email is down there below, so that if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or if you have anything that you want me to cover on this channel, you can send it to me on any of those platforms. If I cover the material that you send me, I will shout you out in that video that I make on it. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me today, and I will see you on the next video. Bye for now.